Bullies tormented the new kid until his hidden talent left them begging for mercy. Marcus Finley hunched his shoulders as he navigated the crowded hallways of Westlake High School. At 15, he was painfully aware of how his lanky 5'10" frame and awkward gait made him stand out among the confident teenagers who seemed to own these halls. His dark-rimmed glasses kept sliding down his nose, and his curly brown hair needed a trim weeks ago. The oversized thrift store clothes he wore, partly due to his family's tight budget since moving to this affluent suburb and partly to hide his skinny frame, only added to his new kid aura that seemed to attract the wrong kind of attention. It had been 3 weeks since his family relocated after his father's job transfer, and Marcus was still trying to find his footing. Back in his old town, he'd had friends who appreciated his quiet intelligence and dry humor. Here, those qualities seemed to paint a target on his back. What no one at Westlake knew, what no one had bothered to find out, was that Marcus had been training in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu since he was 7 years old. His father, a former amateur competitor, had insisted that his son learn to defend himself. For 8 years, Marcus had dedicated himself to the discipline, eventually earning his brown belt and winning several youth regional championships. But his father had always emphasized that these skills were for protection, never for aggression. The true strength of a fighter, his dad often said, is knowing when not to fight. So far at Westlake, Marcus had been following that philosophy religiously. The self-proclaimed rulers of Westlake's social hierarchy were Blake Donovan and his two constant shadows, Dex Murphy and Trent Wilcox. Blake was the star quarterback with perfectly styled blonde hair, expensive clothes, and the kind of confident swagger that came from never hearing the word no. Dex was his bulky enforcer, a linebacker whose neck seemed to have disappeared years ago beneath layers of muscle. Trent was the lankier, quicker one, with a sharp tongue and cruel laugh that always followed Blake's jokes. They had noticed Marcus on his very first day, when he'd accidentally bumped into Blake while looking at dice. His schedule. "Watch it, freak," Blake had snarled, shoving Marcus hard enough to send him stumbling into the lockers. Marcus had mumbled an apology and quickly walked away, telling himself that engaging wasn't worth it. He was here to get good grades and eventually get into a decent college, not to make waves. Westlake High was a sprawling campus with modern facilities that reflected the wealthy tax base of the surrounding community. The gleaming hallways, state-of-the-art gymnasium, and spacious cafeteria were impressive, but to Marcus they just provided more spaces for humiliation. The cafeteria, with its social minefield of unspoken seating arrangements, was particularly treacherous. The hallway intersection near the senior lockers was another danger zone. And the boys' locker room before gym class had quickly become a chamber of daily torment. By the end of his first week, Blake and his friends had established a routine. They'd accidentally knock Marcus's books out of his hands in the hallway. They'd taken to calling him Skeletor because of his thin build, and the nickname had spread like wildfire. In the cafeteria, they'd make exaggerated gagging sounds if he sat anywhere near them, ensuring he ate alone. When teachers were looking, they were careful, but the constant stream of whispers, snickers, and accidental shoves were wearing Marcus down. Just get through the day, Marcus thought, as he slipped into his seat for English class. Don't engage. Don't give them what they want, but each day it got harder to follow his own advice. "Hey, Skeletor," Blake whispered from the seat behind him. "Did your mom dress you this morning? Or did you pick those clothes from the dumpster yourself?" Marcus stared straight ahead, focusing on their teacher, Mrs. Fernandez, as she discussed their upcoming essay on The Outsiders. The irony wasn't lost on him. "I think he's deaf," Trent Stage whispered from the seat beside Blake. "Or maybe just stupid." Marcus's fingers tightened around his pencil, but he kept his expression neutral. What they didn't realize was that every insult, every push, every humiliation was being carefully catalogued in his mind. Not for revenge, at least that's what he told himself, but as data points, teaching him their patterns, their weaknesses, their psychology. It was how he approached jiu-jitsu matches too. Study your opponent, understand their tendencies, find their vulnerabilities. But unlike in jiu-jitsu, he had no intention of using that knowledge. His father's words echoed in his head. "The moment you use your training to intimidate others, you've lost everything I've tried to teach you." So Marcus endured. The pattern continued for 2 more weeks. In the hallways, Blake would shoulder check him hard enough to send his books flying. In gym class, he somehow always ended up as Marcus's opponent in whatever activity they were doing, using it as an opportunity to accidentally hurt him. Marcus deliberately underperformed, knowing that showing his true athletic ability would only make things worse. Some of the other students had started to notice. A few gave him sympathetic looks, but no one intervened. The teachers either didn't see or chose not to see. Marcus understood. Blake's father was on the school board, and his family donated heavily to the athletic department. Besides, in the hierarchy of high school problems, a few shoves and mean comments didn't register as a crisis requiring intervention. Marcus had made exactly one friend, Ellie Chen, a quiet girl from his AP biology class who had been assigned as his lab partner. She was kind and smart and didn't seem to care about the social hierarchies that dominated Westlake. Sometimes they would eat lunch together in the courtyard, away from the cacophony of the cafeteria. "You know, you could report them," Ellie suggested one day after witnessing Blake knock Marcus's lunch tray from his hands in the cafeteria line. Marcus had just shrugged as he picked up the scattered food. "And then what? They get detention. And then they make my life even more miserable? No thanks." "So you're just going to let them keep doing this?" Ellie pressed. Marcus gave her a small, mysterious smile. "I'm handling it my way." The truth was, he wasn't sure how much longer he could handle it. Each night, he would take out his frustrations on the punching bag his dad had set up in their garage, practicing combinations until his knuckles were raw. Sometimes he imagined Blake's face on the bag, and those sessions lasted much longer. The breaking point came on a rainy Thursday in October. Marcus had forgotten his umbrella, and by the time he reached school his clothes were soaked through. He was changing his shirt in the bathroom when the door swung open, and Blake, Dex, and Trent sauntered in. "Well, look at Skeletor trying to build some muscle," Blake sneered, eyeing Marcus's exposed torso. What they couldn't know was that beneath the baggy clothes, Marcus was lean but powerfully built from years of training. Marcus quickly pulled his dry shirt on, but not before Dex snapped a picture with his phone. "This is going on Instagram," Dex laughed. Caption: "Local scarecrow caught changing. Birds still not scared. Just delete it," Marcus said quietly, his voice steady despite the anger bubbling inside him. "Or what?" Blake stepped closer, using his 2-inch height advantage to loom over. "Marcus, what are you going to do about it, Skeletor?" Marcus met his gaze steadily. "I'm asking nicely. Delete it." The three bullies exchanged glances, momentarily thrown by Marcus's calm demeanor. Then Blake shoved him hard against the bathroom wall. "Make me." For a split second, Marcus considered it. He visualized the sequence of moves that would put Blake on the ground in seconds. A double-leg takedown, transition to mount, control the arms. It would be so easy. Instead, he took a deep breath and said, "It's not worth it." Blake laughed, a harsh sound that bounced off the bathroom tiles. "That's what I thought. You're nothing but a coward." They left, still laughing, and Marcus let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. His father would be proud of his restraint, but a new voice was emerging in his head, one that wondered if restraint was always the right choice. That afternoon, the picture circulated through the school's social networks, photoshopped to make Marcus look even more scrawny, with crude drawings and captions added. By the end of the day, it seemed like everyone had seen it. The snickers followed him through the hallways like a wave. Even Mr. Reeves, his history teacher, had seemed to be suppressing a smile when Marcus walked into class. That hurt more than he wanted to admit. Marcus walked home slowly that day. Rain. Still falling, not bothering with an umbrella this time. Something had shifted inside him. The philosophy his father had instilled in him, that strength came from restraint, was being tested like never before. That night at dinner, his parents noticed his silence. "Everything okay at school, buddy?" his dad asked, concern etching his features. Marcus nodded, pushing his food around his plate. "Yeah, just tired." Later in the garage, he hit the punching bag harder than usual, each strike precise and powerful. His father watched from the doorway for a few minutes before stepping in. "Want to talk about it?" he asked, holding the bag steady. Marcus threw a combination jab cross hook before answering. "Dad, when you taught me about not using jujitsu against others, what about when someone really deserves it?" His father's expression grew serious. "Is someone bullying you at school?" Marcus shrugged, throwing another combination. "Nothing I can't handle." "Marcus." His father's voice was firm. "Look at me." Marcus stopped, breathing hard, and met his father's gaze. "The skills I taught you are for protection, yours and others. If you're being threatened, physically threatened, you have every right to defend yourself. But using your training to teach someone a lesson or to get revenge, that's not what we're about." Marcus nodded, but a question still burned inside him. What if by not doing anything, I'm letting them think it's okay to treat people like this? What if they just move on to someone else who can't defend themselves? His father was quiet for a long moment. "That's a tough one, son. Sometimes the Right thing isn't clear, but I trust you to make the right choice when the moment comes. Marcus wasn't sure if that was permission or not, but it gave him something to think about. The next day at school, there was a different energy in the air. News had spread about a party at Blake's house that weekend. His parents were out of town, and it was set to be the social event of the season. Everyone was talking about it. Marcus, of course, wasn't invited. He was at his locker when he overheard Blake and his friends talking around the corner. "So I told Ellie she could come if she brings some of her friends," Blake was saying. "That quiet Asian chick is actually kind of hot." "You think everyone's hot when you're drunk," Dex laughed. "Nah, man, I'm telling you. Plus, she's smart. Might be able to get her to do my bio homework if I play it right." Marcus felt his fists clench. Using him as a punching bag was one thing. Targeting Ellie, his only friend, was another. At lunch, he found Ellie in their usual spot in the courtyard. "Are you really going to Blake's party?" he asked without preamble. Ellie looked surprised. "How did you know about that?" I overheard him talking. "Ellie, those guys are bad news." She sighed. "I know Blake's a jerk to you, but Amber and Zoe really want to go, and they don't want to go without me." Amber and Zoe were Ellie's friends from the debate team. "Besides, maybe if Blake gets to know me, I can convince him to lay off." "You." Marcus shook his head. "That's not your responsibility. And trust me, Blake's not interested in getting to know you for your personality." "What's that supposed to mean?" I heard him talking. "He's just trying to use you." Ellie's eyes flashed. "So you don't think a guy like Blake could actually be interested in someone like me?" "That's not what I—" "Save it, Marcus. I can take care of myself." She gathered her things and left, leaving Marcus alone with his untouched lunch and a growing sense that things were spiraling out of control. The rest of the day passed in a blur. After his last class, Marcus was heading to his locker when he heard a commotion in the hallway ahead. A crowd had gathered, and at the center were Blake and a freshman boy Marcus didn't recognize. The boy was frantically trying to pick up scattered papers while Blake held a notebook just out of reach. "Jump for it, freshman," Blake taunted, holding the notebook higher as the smaller boy tried to grab it. Something snapped inside Marcus. Before he could think better of it, he pushed through the crowd and snatched the notebook from Blake's hand in one quick movement. The hallway went silent. Blake turned slowly, his expression changing from surprise to anger when he saw who had intervened. "Look who found some balls," he sneered. "Stay out of this, Skeletor. It doesn't concern you." Marcus handed the notebook back to the freshman, who took it with wide eyes and quickly retreated. Then he faced Blake. "I'm tired of watching you push people around," Marcus said, his voice carrying in the silent hallway. "Find something better to do with your time." Blake's face flushed red. "You think you're tough now? Let's see how tough you are tomorrow after school, behind the gym, unless you're too scared." A challenge, direct and public. Marcus knew that walking away now would only make things worse. Blake would never stop, and now he'd be even more determined to make an example of Marcus. "I'll be there," Marcus said quietly, "but you might want to bring more friends." A collective "ooh" went through the crowd. Blake's eyes narrowed. "You're dead, Finley," he spat, before stalking off with Dex and Trent close behind. The crowd dispersed, buzzing with excitement about the promised fight. Marcus stood alone in the hallway, wondering if he'd just made a terrible mistake. That night, he didn't tell his parents about the confrontation. Instead, he spent an extra hour in the garage, not just hitting the punching bag but going through his jiu-jitsu forms, mentally preparing for what was coming. The next day felt surreal. Word of the impending fight had spread throughout the school, and Marcus noticed people looking at him differently, some with curiosity, others with pity, a few with newfound respect for standing up to Blake. Ellie cornered him before biology. "Is it true? Are you really fighting Blake after school?" Marcus shrugged. "He didn't give me much choice." "You always have a choice. Just don't show up, or tell a teacher. And then what? It never ends, Ellie. At some point you have to draw a line." She studied his face. "You're different today. Calmer." Marcus gave her a small smile. "I know what I'm doing." By the time the final bell rang, it seemed like half the school was finding reasons to linger on campus. The area behind the gym was a secluded spot, hidden from the main campus by a row of trees, where teachers rarely patrolled. Marcus arrived to find a sizable crowd already gathered. Blake stood in the center with Dex and Trent flanking him, looking confident and ready to put on a show. "Didn't think you'd show," Blake called out as Marcus approached. Marcus set his backpack down carefully. "I said I would," Blake smirked, cracking his knuckles theatrically. "Last chance to back out, Skeletor. Beg for forgiveness in front of everyone, and maybe I'll only break one of your arms." The crowd had formed a circle around them. Marcus saw Ellie at the edge, her expression worried. He saw the freshman from yesterday watching with wide eyes. He saw dozens of faces, some eager for blood, others uncomfortable but unwilling to intervene. No teachers to save you, Blake taunted, starting to circle. No daddy to fight your battles. Marcus remained still, centered, his breathing even. All the fear and anxiety that had plagued him for weeks had evaporated, replaced by a calm focus that came from thousands of hours of training. Blake lunged suddenly, throwing a wild haymaker aimed at Marcus's face. With a slight shift of his weight, Marcus slipped the punch entirely, not even needing to block. Surprised, Blake stumbled forward from his own momentum. Before he could recover, Marcus stepped in, secured a clinch, and executed a perfect hip toss that sent Blake crashing to the ground with Marcus in control on top. The crowd gasped. Blake's face registered shock for only a moment before it contorted. With rage, he tried to buck Marcus off, but Marcus had already established side control, one of the fundamental dominant positions in jiu-jitsu. "Get off me," Blake snarled, struggling ineffectively. Marcus leaned close and spoke quietly, so only Blake could hear. "I'm going to let you up, walk away, and this ends here." He released his hold and stood, backing up to give Blake space. For a moment it seemed like Blake might actually take the offer. He got to his feet slowly, his face flushed with humiliation, as whispers rippled through the crowd. Then Dex shouted, "Don't let this freak show you up, Blake. Kick his ass." That was all the encouragement Blake needed. With a roar, he charged at Marcus, throwing punches wildly. Marcus weaved and dodged, his movements economical and precise. Years of training had taught him to read body language, to anticipate strikes before they were thrown. Where Blake was all rage and power, Marcus was calm and technical. After evading several punches, Marcus saw his opening. He ducked under a wild swing, stepped in close, and delivered a sharp jab to Blake's solar plexus. Not hard enough to do damage, but enough to knock the wind from him. As Blake doubled over, gasping, Marcus swept his legs from under him, sending him crashing to the ground again. This time, Marcus followed him down into mount position, controlling Blake's arms to prevent him from striking back. "Stay down," Marcus warned. "It's over." But Blake wouldn't quit. He bucked and thrashed, managing to free one arm, which he swung wildly at Marcus's head. Marcus blocked the punch and smoothly transitioned to an arm bar, hyperextending Blake's elbow to the edge of pain. "I could break your arm right now," Marcus said calmly, applying just enough pressure to make his point. "Is that what you want?" Fear finally registered in Blake's eyes. He shook his head frantically. Marcus released the hold and stood up, backing away once more. "It's done. We're done." The crowd was dead silent now, watching in disbelief. Blake, Donovan, the untouchable king of Westlake High, had been thoroughly dominated, and by the skinny new kid no less. Blake got to his feet slowly, holding his arm. His face was a mixture of pain, humiliation, and, most surprisingly, confusion. "Who the hell are you?" he asked, his voice hoarse. "Just someone who got tired of being your punching bag," Marcus replied evenly. Blake looked around at the silent crowd, at the faces watching him with new eyes. His untouchable aura had been shattered. Without another word, he turned and walked away, Trent trailing uncertainly behind him. Only Dex remained, his meaty fists clenched. "You think this is over?" he growled, taking a step toward Marcus. But before he could take another, someone stepped between them, the freshman whose notebook Blake had taken. "Leave him alone," the boy said, his voice shaking slightly but determined. Another student joined, him, then another, then Ellie. Suddenly, Dex was facing not just Marcus, but a small wall of students who'd found their courage. Dex spat on the ground. "Whatever, you're all freaks." But he backed away, following after Blake and Trent. The crowd began to disperse, many stopping to pat Marcus on the back or look at him with newfound respect. Some seemed disappointed that the fight hadn't been bloodier, but most seemed impressed by his skill and restraint. Ellie approached, shaking her head in amazement. "Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu since age 7, Marcus explained before she could ask. "Brown belt, and you let them bully you for weeks, when you could have done that at any time." Marcus shrugged. "My dad always taught me that fighting is the last resort, not the first. I was hoping it wouldn't come to this." The freshman whose notebook he'd saved came up to them, eyes wide with admiration. "That was amazing. You've got to teach me some of those moves." Marcus smiled. "Come by the community center on Saturday morning. I help teach the kids' class there." As they walked away from the now empty fight scene, Ellie bumped her shoulder against his. "So, no party for me tomorrow night?" Marcus laughed. "Probably not, but I hear the movie theater is showing a horror film marathon." "Much better plan," she agreed. Over the next few weeks, the dynamics at Westlake High shifted noticeably. Blake, Dex, and Trent kept their distance from Marcus, and interestingly, from each other. Without their leader's confidence, the trio's power structure had collapsed. Blake seemed changed, more subdued. Once Marcus caught him watching from across the cafeteria with an unreadable expression. When their eyes met, Blake gave a small, almost imperceptible nod before looking away. Marcus found himself with a new circle of friends, not because of his fighting skills, but because standing up to Blake had broken a spell of fear that had held many students captive. People who had been afraid to draw the bully's attention by associating with him now sought him out. The whispers in the hallway were different now. "That's Marcus Finley," they'd say. "He's the one who stood up to Blake." Some of the stories had grown in the telling. In some versions, he'd fought off all 3 bullies at once. In others, he was a secret MMA fighter sent to infiltrate the school. Marcus let the rumors swirl. The truth was impressive enough. 2 weeks after the fight, Mr. Reeves held him back after history class. "I heard about what happened," the teacher said, his expression serious. "Violence isn't the answer, Mr. Finley." Marcus met his gaze steadily. "I agree, sir. That's why I gave him every chance to walk away." Mr. Reeves studied him for a moment. "The other teachers and we should have done more. We saw what was happening. Why didn't you?" The teacher sighed. "Politics, convenience, fear of making things worse. None of them good reasons, I know." Marcus nodded. He understood all too well. "For what it's worth," Mr. Reeves continued, "things seem better around here lately. Not just for you." It was true. With Blake's crew no longer enforcing their harsh social hierarchy, the entire atmosphere of the school had lightened. People who had kept their heads down were now engaging more freely. Even the cafeteria seating arrangements seemed more fluid. One day, Marcus was surprised to find Blake sitting alone at a table in the library, struggling with what appeared to be biology homework. After a moment's hesitation, Marcus approached. "Need some help," he offered. Blake looked up, startled. His first instinct seemed to be to refuse, but after a moment, he nodded. "Yeah, actually, I don't understand any of this." Marcus sat down and began explaining the concepts. It was awkward at first, but gradually the tension eased. "Why are you helping me?" Blake finally asked. "After everything?" Marcus considered the question. "Because holding grudges is exhausting, and because everyone deserves a second chance." Blake was quiet for a long moment. "I was a real asshole to you." "Yeah, you were. My dad—" Blake started, then stopped. "No, that's not an excuse. I was an asshole because I could be, and no one stopped me." He looked at Marcus. "Until you." It wasn't quite an apology, but it was a start. Word got around that Marcus was now tutoring Blake in biology, which caused its own ripple of surprised whispers throughout the school. But to Marcus, it was the perfect resolution. Not a victory through dominance, but a rebalancing that allowed everyone to maintain their dignity. At home, when his father finally heard about the fight, from another parent, of course, he sat Marcus down for a serious talk. "I'm not angry," he said after Marcus explained everything, "but I am concerned. You know what I've always taught you about using your skills." "I know, Dad, but I tried everything else. Walking away just made it worse. Ignoring it just made it worse. At some point you have to draw a line." His father was quiet for a moment. "Did you hurt him?" "Not permanently, just enough to make him stop." "And now?" Marcus shrugged. "Now we're not friends, but we're not enemies either." "It's better," his father nodded slowly. "Sometimes standing up for yourself is the right choice, even if it means going against what I taught you. I'm proud of you for finding your own way." That weekend, Marcus's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. It was Blake, asking if their tutoring session was still on for Monday. Marcus confirmed it was, then added, "By the way, there's a new jiu-jitsu class for beginners starting at the community center, if you're interested." There was a long pause before Blake's response came through. "Yeah, maybe. Thanks." Marcus smiled to himself. It wasn't friendship, not exactly, but it was something new, a relationship based on mutual respect rather than fear and intimidation. And in the complex ecosystem of high school, that was a rare and valuable thing. As Marcus put his phone away, he reflected on everything that had happened since his arrival at Westlake. He had arrived as a target and become something more. Not a bully himself, but someone who had found the courage to break a cycle of intimidation that had affected not just him, but the entire school. His father had been right all along. The true strength of a fighter wasn't in dominating others. It was in knowing when to fight, when to show mercy, a